Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Matsumura's sort of his personal life and also professional. So, when he was at a fairly young age, he passed the test that was called Kakyo. Kakyo test was to enter the civil service in Okinawa. He became the chief of the military and the court retainer for the king when he was quite young, in his early 20s or around 30. So basically from the age of 20 to 30, he was already pretty well established, and he started working for the king. He was the king's personal bodyguard and the military advisor. Military being an interesting term because Okinawa, of course, was not armed at the time. They had no weapons and they really had no military. So military advisor meant that he sort of was the police advisor, had that kind of role. He served for 3 different kings, the last 3 that were in Okinawa: Shoko, Shoiku, and Shotai. Shotai was the last king of Okinawa. He eventually got the boot when the Japanese took over and decided to reform. In his official role as a military advisor, he made 2 different trips to Fuzhou in China, and he made 2 different trips to Satsuma. That was at the time, again, Okinawa was sort of in that in-between phase where they were half loyal to China, half loyal to Japan, and they also had their own king. They were an independent kingdom, but they sort of had their loyalty split at that time. Those trips were really when Matsumura did a lot of his training overseas, because he was part of those delegations that traveled, so he had the opportunity to meet and train with a lot of other martial artists. Near the end of his life, after Shotai was removed basically from the Okinawan throne, Matsumura, the rumors and everything are that he became a recluse, but he was teaching a lot at that time in martial arts. The other thing to think about, the stories about him and everything really emphasize his sort of military mentality and his strategic mentality, and also the fact that, you don't get hired as a bodyguard for the king of Okinawa or the king's sort of personal military advisor unless you know how to fight, and he got the job when he was still in his 20s, or at the very latest when he was 30, so he'd established a reputation for himself already by that time. But the other thing that's interesting about Matsumura is he also had quite a scholarly background as well, so he's well known for his calligraphy, for his ink paintings, and his Buddhist and Confucian studies as well. He's one of the first people to talk about the philosophy of karate as well. In a letter that he left to one of his students, he outlines the 7, it's called the 7 principles of Bu, basically, martial arts principles, and he outlines those in his letter. But also it's interesting to note that he had the sort of military side and the fighting skill, but at the same time he also had sort of a more scholarly background as well.